All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome again to our second Character Day webinar. I've heard some of those names. I definitely know you guys. You've been with us over the years. This is our 5th year and we are going strong. You just heard from Karen McCartney. She's our program moderator and she's the program coordinator at On Costa College Focus at the Lyford Key Foundation. So you'll be hearing from her from time to time through this presentation. So Character Day Bahamas is brought to you by the PACE Foundation, right? So the PACE Foundation provides support to the PACE school. The PACE school provides then supports teenage mothers. And they help to bridge that gap for them during that time by providing them with continuing their educational journey, providing them with health support, with counseling services, and allowing them to be the best parents that they could be while continuing on their journey and developing careers. It's a really important function that they serve. And so PACE thought that Character Day was a good fit for them because a lot of what they do with the young girls and with their families centers around character education. So what is Character Day? We heard about Character Days. Some of you are with us many, many times, so you guys probably know this. So it's just an opportunity to explore who we are, who do we want to be, right? And think about what are the things I can do to develop my character strengths. And so anyone could participate in Character Day. And what you do is you host some sort of activity, event, big, small. It could be with one student, with your family, with your church group, your youth group, your classroom, an entire school, a business, right? The opportunities are endless. And the idea there is that you want to spark discussions to get people thinking about who they are, what are their strengths, and which strengths I'd like to improve upon, strengthen even further so that I could be the type of person that you want to be. So of course, welcome aboard. We're so happy that you're here. So just to do some housekeeping, on your screen, you will see a chat function. That's the function we'll be using to make comments like you just did. You told us where you guys are from. It was so cool to hear so many of you that we've met over these years. Then we have the Q&A function. The Q&A function is where you put your questions to our presenters, right? So please, only any comments that you want to add, put it in the chat. Q&A only for the presenters. You'll also see raise hand. We won't be using that one today. You'll see more or some dots for some other features, and we'll be using the poll feature. So right now, as our little icebreaker, I'm going to do a poll. So there are 2 questions in your poll. The first question is, who's in the audience? And the second question is, true talk. Are you wearing PJs right now? Right, because you know, so just click on the screen, click your options. Right, so I see we have lots of educators, guidance counselors. I don't see any youth leaders yet. School psychologists. Nobody in the none of the above. All right, I'm going to give you a few more seconds. I still see votes coming in. Right, so you have 2 questions, 2 options. "81 of us have voted, 72% of us have voted so far, so I'll give you a few more seconds to choose your options there for who are you, who's in the audience, and are you wearing PJs right now? All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end the polling. And here are our results. So 71% of us are educators. We have 18% guidance counselors, just 1 youth leader this time, some school psychologists, and some people are just interested in the topic. That's super cool. I like that. So those are the people who are well-dressed, decent. I'm well-dressed and decent today too. 100% yes, y'all are on my crew. I'm on your crew, right? Usually, business on the top, casual on the bottom, and haha, I literally just took them off. Awesome stuff. All right. So today we're going to have 3 15-minute presentations. The presentations will be from Denika Curtis, Stephen Thompson, Jewel Taylor, and then we'll have a short mindfulness session with Dr. Niambi Campbell-Dean. After each of the presentations, there'll be a 5-minute Q&A session. Remember, put your questions in the Q&A feature. You could start typing them in while the presentation is going on. You could also type them in while the Q&A session is taking place. So we have these workshops. This is our 5th year of workshops, and this is our goals, right? We're looking for opportunities to think and reflect, right? Rejuvenate ourselves as we go into the new school year. We're looking at, we're discussing ideas connected to character development and hopefully sharing strategies that can support you as you implement these activities in your classrooms, with your students, with your families. And we also want to foster long-term projects. So here's our agenda for today. So our topic is tapping into the strengths of the community in times of change, uncertainty, and isolation. First up will be Denika Curtis, who will talk about emotional intelligence, fostering skills through adversities, Mr. Stephen Thompson. We can see you, digital citizenship, Jewel Taylor. Then I'll come back again to wrap up about Character Day and talk about our small grants program and what's next. And then we'll end the session with a mindfulness practice by Dr. Campbell-Dean as we calm ourselves to go back out into this new day. And it's a Thursday too, it's a lockdown day, right? So we can't even leave our houses. So we might need to really center ourselves there. So again, all of this is centered around our character strengths. And the character strengths have been divided into 6 categories or 6 virtues under which each has a set of character strengths. So I want you to think for a moment. Who is the person that you admire most? Is there someone in our society that you really admire, look up to, think that they are successful in whatever your definition of success is, right? So my question to you, I want you to take a look at these strengths and think about it to yourself. What are the top 3 character strengths of a successful person in our society, right? So this is just a moment for you to just think, reflect on it. Right, and if you have identified those 3 top strengths you think successful people in our society have, I want you to think about how you can cultivate these strengths in yourself, right? So in your view, if you think, for example, kindness is really important, how can you cultivate that in yourself and also in others that you work with? Right, and so this is what Character Day really is about. And so as we go through these presentations, I want you to think about how can I apply these principles to the way that I live, and also how can I help support those around me to develop those particular strengths as well. So I now turn over the webinar to our moderator, who will introduce our first speaker, Ms. Denika Curtis.
Thank you, Charlene. Yes, Denika Curtis is our first speaker. Denika Curtis is a former social worker and counseling psychologist. She earned her Master's of Science degree in counseling from Barry University in 2017. She is currently the Youth Development Leader at Bahamas. As a former social worker, Denika has worked with a diverse clientele and hopes to have an energetic impact as she assists in supporting the students and parents at PACE. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you our first speaker, Ms. Denika Curtis.
Yay! I'm imagining applause at this time. Here we go. So, emotional intelligence. Oh, I don't know what just happened. I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty. Okay. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine, everyone. Jeez. Ugh. Okay. I'm gonna need to use my emotional intelligence to get through this episode. All right. So, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. Emotional intelligence is also referred to as the emotional quotient or the EQ. So just as the intellectual quotient is called the IQ, the emotional quotient is called the EQ. So this is interesting, at least in my opinion, because traditionally we're used to one brand of intelligence, just testing your IQ. You know, if you have a high IQ, then you're branded as intelligent. But what about your emotional intelligence? So I'm going to discuss 5 attributes to emotional intelligence. The first, okay. The first is self-awareness. Self-awareness refers to knowing and understanding oneself. This means being honest and having self-confidence about both strengths and weaknesses. So as a counselor, I usually use a tool called a strength finder to help kids to identify the strengths within themselves. That's just the way God made us. Everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. People with high emotional intelligence tend to use their strengths confidently to impact their lives and impact the lives of others around them. Number 2, self-regulation. Self-regulation refers to the ability to control one's actions and impulses. This includes being able to calm oneself and not overreact during a mistake. So earlier in the presentation, my slides went all out of whack and it's made me feel like I was making a big mistake. A part of having emotional intelligence is regulating your emotions so that you don't overreact when you make one mistake. Number 3, empathy. Empathy refers to awareness and considerations of other people's feelings. Think about the metaphor to walk in someone else's shoe. If we were in a hall and in person together in a COVID-free world, perhaps we could play the icebreaker where we try to cross the room wearing each other's shoes. It's usually difficult because life is different through other people's perspective. Empathy refers to the ability to see the world from another person's perspective. Number 4, motivation. So number 4, the 4th attribute to emotional intelligence, motivation. This not only refers to the ability to be motivated, but the ability to motivate others. This attribute is driven by the desire to complete goals rather than to obtain wealth or prestige. So a lot of teachers, I see from the poll earlier that Charlene took, that there are a lot of teachers here and school psychologists and community helpers, youth leaders. This is an attribute that most teachers and youth leaders and community helpers tend to have. Because you're not getting wealth or prestige out of teaching. But you know, you want to see the goal completed, you want to see your student excel, you want to see things come together. So most of you probably already have this attribute. And number 5, social skills. When I say social skills as it relates to emotional intelligence, I don't just mean being friendly to others. This involves understanding people and developing relationships with them. And I insert this quote from Daniel Goleman, who is the father of the emotional quotient. It says, "What really matters for success, character, happiness, and lifelong achievement is a definite set of emotional skills. Your EQ, not just purely cognitive abilities that are measured by conventional IQ tests." And what this quote is basically saying is that your EQ is just as important as your IQ for a quality life. I know that personally, I'm not able to solve the world's greatest math problem. However, I'm able to relate to people. So it's wonderful that now we have different strains of intelligence. It's not only about your IQ, it's also about your EQ. Why is emotional intelligence important? Emotional intelligence allows you to understand and manage your own emotions in order to self-motivate and create positive social interactions. It's the first step in realizing your true potential. So what this is, sorry. So what this is saying that emotional intelligence is an opportunity for you to get to know yourself. Individuals with higher levels of emotional intelligence are less likely to succumb to the negative impact of stresses. We all have stresses. That's a part of life. But with high emotional intelligence or practicing emotional intelligence, our stresses would not be able to consume our lives. Another reason emotional intelligence is important is because intellect works best when it is accompanied by high emotional intelligence. Finally, emotional intelligence is a useful skill to prevent making decisions based on emotional bias. And at this time, I'm going to have a sip of water because my throat is cracking. Okay. So simple ways to model emotional intelligence in the classroom. And when I say the classroom, I know that we're engaging in virtual learning platforms. So these can be used in virtual learning platforms as well. So eye contact. You know, they say eyes are the windows to the soul. Research shows that infants as young as 2 days old prefer to look at a gazing face. Eye contact is a way for us to connect to each other. So I like, as a counselor, seeing clients on the virtual platform. I personally would encourage anyone working on the virtual platform to encourage your students to use the camera, because you need to be able to make that connection with each other, even online. Encourage making faces. Reading other people's emotions are essential to compassion and empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel someone else's emotion, but making faces is a way to read other people's emotion and create that empathy. Once again, this is another reason why it's important to use the cameras on virtual learning platforms, so you're able to read the expressions on your student's face. See whether they're looking confused, whether they're looking proud, whether they're looking like they're tuned in. Number 3, notice posture. Again, noticing body language is a skill of connection. As a counselor, it's one of the first things we were trained to note and sometimes model or emulate people's body language, people's posture. Studies show that a slumped posture is associated with developed helplessness and lack of persistence. Number 5, name that emotion. Earlier, I talked about regulating emotion. How are you going to regulate emotions if you don't know what you're feeling? Again, as a counselor, I like to use something called the feelings wheel. It has tons of different feelings to help your students to identify what they're feeling. So it starts off with happy feeling, surprised, bad, fearful, angry, disgusted, and it uses different adjectives to describe these feelings. And you can find this on feelingswheel.com. It's a wonderful tool to help people to understand, to identify what they're feeling. Number 5, notice tone. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. How many people can relate to this adage? Noticing the inflections and deflections in a person's voice is a part of good communication. For instance, imagine someone telling you to watch out, but they're not using a haste or a rush tone, and they're just saying, watch out, watch out. It doesn't leave the same impact as watch out, watch out. Finally, emotional intelligence. Finally, another way to model emotional intelligence in the classroom is to listen for understanding. Perhaps the biggest communication problem we have is we do not listen to understand. We listen to reply. Responding with empathy. This is the final one. Responding with empathy always reminds me of a story of my cousin in grade 2. I always remember my cousin, when her grandmother died, she went to tell her teacher that the grandmother died, and the teacher responded by brushing her out of the classroom like, well, thank you, that's great, wonderful, now don't come back in the classroom until lunchtime is over. We're able to laugh at it now as adults, but back then, it always left the mark that she really didn't care. So responding with empathy, really listening to understand what people are saying, is a way that we can model emotional intelligence. In conclusion, the emotional intelligence is just as important as our intellectual intelligence for a well-rounded life. And we can model these behaviors by ensuring that we use our self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, motivation, and social skills. Thank you. Are there any?
Thank you very much, Denika. We have so far 2 questions for you.
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
going to start with Jessie Moxie.
Okay.
So Jessie Moxie's question, to what extent is intellect a major role in emotional intelligence? I'll repeat the question. To what extent is intellect a major role in emotional intelligence?
That's a good question. I would say, and anyone can help me join in and help me with this answer, but I would say to the effect that emotional intelligence in your intellect. Repeat the question again.
Okay. To what extent is intellect a major role in emotional intelligence? So essentially, do you have to be smart? Do you have to have a high IQ to be emotionally intelligent?
No, you don't have to have a high IQ to be emotionally intelligent. However, if you have intellectual disabilities, perhaps that may prevent your emotional, or make it harder for you to develop emotional intelligence. But you don't have to have a high IQ to have a high EQ. Your EQ can be higher than your IQ.
And I would just jump in and add to that one of the things about emotional intelligence is that it causes us to reflect on what we perceive as intelligence in a different way, right? That sometimes we kind of get stuck in thinking of intelligence as, well, how many BGCSEs did you get, right? Or what was your score on the SAT or something like that. But emotional intelligence causes us to see that there are many different ways that people can be intelligent. They can be intelligent in terms of their math skills. They can be intelligent in terms of their emotions. They can be intelligent we have a lot of people in the Bahamas. We know that we are spectacular athletes, right? Look at our presence in the Olympics. So that requires an intelligence about your body, right? Your kinesthetics, the ability to move and know where your body needs to be in order to take off really fast, or the angle that you need to be at to make that jump shot, right? So emotional intelligence causes us to think of intelligence in different ways. So while, as Denika was saying, while somebody may be high in their ability to solve that math problem, when it comes to speaking with people or interacting with people, they might not be able to do that. So while the two are not necessarily, while you don't necessarily need to be high in one to be high in the other, there is a relationship between them that we're trying to highlight.
We have another question here. It says, when you say encourage making faces, are you saying take actual time to go over facial expression to familiarize students with the way others express how they are feeling?
Yes, 100% yes. You know those posters that usually have the facial expressions on them? I encourage using those charts to kind of help them to relate the feelings to a mood, because they might not, like you said, they might not be able to emulate, or they may not be able to verbalize what emotions they're feeling, but they may be able to show it in their face, or they may be able to read it in your face. It's a matter of introducing them to like social cues, helping them to understand like a stern face means, you know, you're running out, or this is a happy face. So I hope I answered your question.
Thank you so much. I can see that, because I myself, like with emojis, my children had to teach me, okay, mommy, look at the shape of the mouth. It's a smiling. Look at the eyes, see what they're doing to try to get the right emoji, right? So being able to connect what our faces are saying to how we feel. Another question here. What recommendations do you have for students who are unable to express themselves verbally? For example, if you're working with students with special needs.
So it depends on this kind of special needs, but I always start out with using pictures of things, using the pictures of the faces, or the pictures of the expression that you're trying to express. So let's say that the child has slammed their crayons on the table, and you can use a picture of a frowny face or a picture of an upset face to kind of show that that's how you're feeling about that action. But of course, every disability or every special need is different.
Thank you very much. We have another question. How do you suggest for a person who's normally blunt to tone down the way they communicate with others so that it doesn't come off as offensive?
That's another interesting question. I guess you would have to use your empathy and kind of reason with how would you want to receive a message like that. So try to put yourself in the blunt person's shoes and try to feel how would you want someone to tell you about your tone.
Right. And maybe slowing down before you respond.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you don't react. Think about what you're going to say before you say it. So just awareness of how somebody else might feel if they were to receive the same, that sort of blunt response. I see here someone is making a comment or asking, is this connected to reasoning ability and executive functioning skills? Is this connected to emotional intelligence? Is it the same, or how?
Is your reasoning ability connected to intelligence?
So we hear the terms executive functioning skills. How does that connect to emotional intelligence and also the term reasoning ability?
So your brain is divided up into different parts that are responsible for different functions. So there's a function of your brain that's responsible for what's the word I'm looking for here? That's responsible for empathy, your amygdala. And then there's a portion of your brain that's responsible for your executive functioning skills. So these are different parts of your brain doing different skills.
All right, thank you. Great, wonderful questions. You're having lots of engagement.
I know.
So question, what about a fixed facial expression? There are persons who you're not able to read because they don't show expression. How do you address this? You know, like sometimes you go into an interview and all the interviewers have a deadpan face, like, you know, like, so sometimes you speak to people who have that sort of expression. How do you then respond to them?
So I would say then you move on to body language, and then ultimately as you seek to not necessarily read people, but kind of take emotional cues, you're doing it with the understanding that you're in charge of yourself, and that, you know, you can make anyone, you know, do what they don't do, or you only in charge of yourself. So it's a matter of how you communicate to the person, and hopefully they follow your cue.
All right, thank you so much. So we have a couple more questions. Maybe we could address them later if we have some time. And right now we would like to continue on with our webinar. Please continue, stay on the line. Great, awesome discussion. So next up, we have Jewel Taylor. All right, so next up we have Jewel Taylor, and I invite Karen to introduce Ms. Taylor.
Hi, everyone. Just give me a moment. I'm sorry. I don't know if any of you would have been having some internet connections issues like I would have been having. If you are, then perhaps you're hotspotting, but I do apologize for the break in the transmission that would have been had. So as I set my system back up, I will begin to introduce Ms. Jewel Taylor. One moment. Okay, I apologize once again. Okay, Jewel Taylor is a school psychologist at the Ministry of Education, where she provides academic and behavioral testing for school-aged children in the Bahamas. Jewel enjoys being a change agent in students' lives by providing academic and behavioral recommendations. Her passion for mental health services began with her providing sound advice to children, to family, friends, and college classmates. Jewel graduated from the College of the Bahamas with a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology and went on to obtain a Master's of Arts degree in forensic psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in 2017. Currently, Jewel is employed as a school psychologist, but she also provides teletherapy services to the adult population. Jewel is an active member of her community, and she currently serves as a board member for the PACE Foundation, a director of counseling for the Bahamas Sexual Health and Rights Association, a youth council member, and co-chair of the Children's Fellowship at her local church, the Embassy International. I present to you Ms. Jewel Taylor.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Yes. So today what I'll be talking about is the positive and effective technology use. Last year, I actually spoke a little bit about this, but this year, it's very present that we need to basically go over this. So well, for the first 3 slides, what I'm basically going to be doing is just a quick overview of what I spoke on last year. And then we're basically going to get into the hybrid class. Okay, so what is a digital citizen? A digital citizen basically refers to any person who has the knowledge and skills to effectively use any form of digital technology to communicate with others, participate in society, or to basically consume any form of digital content. And the main goal of being a digital citizen is all about being confident and actually positively engaging in digital technologies. So with that being said, once you are a digital citizen, you actually leave a digital footprint. And your digital footprint is all the stuff that you leave behind as you use or browse the internet. So comments on social media, Skype calls, app use, everything, they are all connected. They are all connected, and you technically leave a footprint behind. It's all a part of your online history and can potentially be seen by other persons or tracked in a database. So it is created through, like I said, like online shopping, social media, and using any form of electronic devices. So here are some tips. We spoke a lot about this last time. However, I'm just going to quickly breeze through it. But these are some tips to staying safe online. So create complex passwords, passwords with letters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase. Boost your network security. I know I have a problem with this because a lot of times I go to places and the first question I ask is, hey, is any Wi-Fi here? So with that being said, once you use Wi-Fi from other places or other organizations, you are opening up your phone to be you are basically opening up your phone and all your personal information for like their Wi-Fi use basically. Use firewalls, always stay guarded with your phone. Click smart, and what I mean by clicking smart is don't click on every advertisement you could sometimes see, because that then strays you off of what you actually are doing, and it could be kind of like a scammy advertisement, or even those advertisements that pop up and say, congratulations, you won. Those are very suspect. Be selective in what you share online and protect your mobile life. So everything you share online, like I said before, can be tracked and can be traced, and it actually sets a tone of who you are, especially like on social media platforms and stuff like that. So practice safe surfing and safe shopping. And what I mean by that is when you go on certain sites, you will see like a padlock in the corner, and it basically shows like a padlock in the upper right in like the search bar. And what that basically shows is that this site is secured. Your information probably won't be leaked. They have a very good protection. So yeah, always watch out for that. And if any site have a lot of bad grammar, or you kind of feel like, hey, this is a little suspect-ish, be wary of that. Keep up to date and be aware of the latest scams. Sometimes we mightn't be aware of the latest scams, and we might click the link innocently, and then just by clicking that, you might open up yourself to a whole array of problems. And just always keep your guard up. Okay, so now we are now going to look at our new normal, and which can now be hybrid learning. So basically what hybrid learning is the combination of both the traditional face-to-face teaching and virtual learning. It's an educational model where students attend classes both in person and also virtually. And as I was putting this together, I started to think about, what are some styles, which style is the best fit for some persons, whether it's online or whether it's face-to-face. And some persons learn best online. However, some persons learn best in a traditional classroom. However, due to COVID-19, hybrid learning is actually our future now. And like I said, we are now forced to restructure our lives because of COVID. So because of this, we have to step out of our old habits, our old routines, and actually look for new strategies to complete tasks. And teaching and providing counseling is absolutely no different. In the past few years, technology has been creeping into the classroom. However, due to the pandemic, it is here in full force. So there will be pros and cons to hybrid learning. However, it's best to be resilient and make the best out of any situation. So even as you focus on the picture, online versus in-person learning, you could see like with online, it allows you to learn at your own pace. You could create more so of a flexible schedule, and it allows you to work simultaneously doing other projects as you learn as well. However, with face-to-face learning, it's actually more hands-on. It holds you accountable and gives you that good structure, and then it allows you that face-to-face time, whether with students or professors, to build a good relationship. So as we look at now moving forward to online learning, we'll have to look at some of the different types and how we could actually provide this information, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. So with providing a synchronous teaching style, it's more so much happening now in real time. So for example, this webinar will be synchronous because, it's happening now, we are live, you could interact with us. However, with asynchronous, it's not happening now. So that would be more so much of your pre-recorded videos, or if it was live and then it was posted later. So that would be our very first webinar that we had last week, even though that it was synchronous, but however, when it ended and we posted it online, whether it's on the Facebook page or even on the YouTube page, it was then posted later. So it's not live. And some of the differences, between synchronous and asynchronous. So synchronous is more so much as I said before, communication happening now and in real time. It's possibly more engaging and can be seen as, more effective, and it allows for instant feedback and clarification. So how persons have questions, they could always, type the question, so they are more engaged and it's more hands-on. And if anybody then has any queries, any questions, or any comments, we could be able to provide that feedback for them like right now. However, with asynchronous, the communication is not live. However, it's possibly more convenient and flexible for persons. So if somebody isn't available right there and now to actually sit in the webinar, they could go back and always, use it. And it allows students and persons to work at their own pace. So what I want you to remember is that as teachers and as guidance counselors and even as school psychologists, we have little control over students' home and learning environments. And with that being said, both learning styles can be effective. So synchronous is more engaging and more hands-on approach, and asynchronous allows for students to learn at their own pace, as I said before. So by providing the recordings, the asynchronous recordings, it gives students the opportunity and the ability to watch and refamiliarize themselves with the information. So they could basically play, pause, and rewind recordings as much as possible, even if they didn't get the information right then and there. And it is a good source of reference. So you'll always have it to learn and go back from it. I know when I helped my nephew a lot of times with his homework, he normally said, "Auntie, I don't understand this." So I teach him the best way I know how to. And because it's so different from how they teach him in school, sometimes I wish that, I just wish that, I have just like a guide through of what the teacher actually used, because his book could sometimes be like all over the place. So it's like, if I have that little book, what the teacher went through step by step, it'll be a good resource for me, so I can ensure that the way the teacher is teaching him and the model that she is using, I could then implement it at home. So not only will it be a good source for them, but it'll also be a good source for the parents as well. And now let's look into actually digitizing your classroom. So with digitizing your classroom, the first thing I would suggest is, what are your goals? like, what are your goals for digitizing your classroom? If you are literally only digitizing your classroom because you have to, you are already at a disadvantage, and moving forward can be burdensome. So what I want you to do is look at the purpose of the online class. You know, what do you wish to achieve in the online class, and actually ways in achieving achieving your goals that you set, and change your teaching strategies. So everybody on here is experts in their fields, right? And with providing now this digital classroom for the students, don't just stand up or sit down to like the whiteboard on Zoom and just teach and basically just reteach that information. However, don't just digitize that, because by doing that you wouldn't be able to use technology to its fullest. Actually use technology and see what you can and cannot do. As simple as, you know, Mrs. Carey providing the poll in the beginning. That is actually, she is not only basically, she is using all the technology has to offer, whether it's those questions. As I was doing my research, I saw a local teacher. She actually digitized a lot of the way she taught. So not only did she, you know, provide that information for them, however, with questions and like with the question and answer period, she ensured that, you know, little polls were popped up on the screen, and she encouraged her students to answer it correctly. And when they did, or like answer the questions, and when they did it correctly, you know, the whole like smiley face and everything popped up. But then when they didn't answer correctly, the frowny face, you know, popped up, and then she was able to interact and engage with her students from that perspective. Have an online teaching platform. So use a teaching tool that facilitates online and virtual learning. Use trusted and secure sites with limited ads. So basically your teaching platforms would be more so much of your Moodle, your Canvas, your Easy Class, or the platform that the Ministry of Education will provide. And then for therapists, the same platform that the Ministry of Education will provide, or your Simple Practice or your Theranest. So with your online platform, learn your teaching tool. So for the first few days, or even for the first few weeks, you will be the IT for your online classroom, you know. And with that being said, host learning videos, or even post learning videos about your teaching tool, like how it works. So for example, excuse me, teach students and teach parents how to use, let's say, we're using like easyclass.com. Teach students and teach parents how to use easyclass.com. Show them how to create their usernames and passwords, and show them where materials can be found, how to upload and submit assignments, and actually show them how to navigate around the digital classroom. Make your teaching tools simple and easy to navigate, not only for yourself, but also for your students and parents. And also view your teaching tools from your students and your parents' perspective. Log into the platform as a student, so you will better be able to understand their questions and their queries. So with this new, basically like with the hybrid learning, or even with digitizing your classroom, for the first few weeks, I'm sure you'll have a lot of students saying, well, let's just say like, Miss Taylor, I don't know how to upload this assignment, or Miss Taylor, I don't even know where to find this assignment, or Miss Taylor, like this is very difficult to go through. And even parents will provide that same thing. However, once you put those learning videos online and basically teach them how to do it, it will then reduce some of those questions, because in the beginning, you don't want the first few weeks of your classroom to be so overcrowded with just actually learning how to maneuver through the online platform. Okay, make your class personal and interactive. So just how you would prepare your classroom with informative posters and with good themes, do the same thing for your online platform and for your digital classroom. So think about what to post, activities to post, and always tailor your activities to the teaching modalities that you will be using. So with that being said, because with the online, the most you could do is probably change the skin of the actual online platform. However, all of the activities you use, let's say you have an underwater theme, a lot of the a lot of your activity you use, ensure that they are entire and encompassing into your actual team, and just make the best out of it. Make teaching lessons short yet informative, and capture the students' attention and know your audience. Just how I can speak for myself, just how sometimes I wouldn't want to sit in like a 3-hour presentation. Students definitely do not want to sit into like a 3 hours learning class. However, grab their attention. Still teach the information that you have there, but know your audience. Know if this grade levels, boy-girl ratio, and know all of that, and grab them with the information that you will present. Give the necessary breaks. Like, if you just have like a break time and inform them, okay guys, like we're just going to take a break from doing this, so you can grab a cup of water or get a snack and recuperate before we actually move into our next topic. And most importantly, do not overwhelm yourself with all of this. It could be very burdensome, and you could feel like you take it on a lot. However, move to your own pace, and don't try to make things so complex that it's difficult for you to understand and to maneuver, and then which will then be difficult for parents and students. Okay, so create a structure and stick to it. Just how you would have a structure in your regular classroom, carry the same thing over into your online classroom. So when I was in school, the first thing we normally did was we had, our little assembly in class, that was like the prayer, the scripture, and a nice Bible song. So do something that would be meaningful. So in your online platform and classroom, do something that will be meaningful to students, that would foster a positive and healthy learning environment. So it could be as simple as just playing, that good tranquil music in the beginning, or even playing like a good song that get persons in the mood for classes, or even playing like an inspirational video. Have that structure. And once you do that, if you then decides to do a prayer and a scripture reading or anything, set that structure so students will know that, okay, when I go in Miss Taylor class, I know for the first 5 minutes she could have this video playing, to get us in the mood, and then she will then we'll then do scripture reading. So just how you would do it in your face-to-face class, do the same thing in online. Practice makes perfect. So run through your first few weeks, ensuring webcam etiquette, lighting, visual, audio, background, appearance, everything added to it, internet connectivity, even though some of the things we cannot control. However, but the things we can, let's practice it and try to perfect it. Whether you do synchronous or asynchronous. With asynchronous, if you're going to then pre-record your videos to then post it online, pre-record your videos to then post it online. Practice what you're going to say, go over your materials, because last night as I was preparing for this, I practice because I know practice made perfect. And even when you're going to be live, do the same thing so you could become familiarized with the content that you're going to teach. And most importantly, set ground rules. So for your ground rules and classroom management, you could set things that would limit distraction. Like you could inform them to mute all mics, no eating in the classroom, ensure that they are appropriately dressed for the session or for class, ensure that they have all of their materials with them, whether it be books, pencils, anything of that nature. Just ensure that they have all that, and, let them know about it. Let them know that, okay, video webcamming will be on. So ensure that your background is appropriate, where you have good lighting, and if you can go in a quiet place in the home, that can then foster you to learn. So with that being said, I then have now 2 videos. One is basically just speaking
Imagine
on
a platform which streamlines your...
So one is basically just talking about how do you digitize a classroom, and it's from easyclass.com.
Imagine a platform which streamlines your resources, assignments, tests, grades, and calendar, and without slowing you down. Welcome to easyclass.com, the online toolset for teachers and professors. EasyClass is simple and free. Create your courses on EasyClass and access your students anytime, make announcements and share materials and files in an organised manner. You can assign schoolwork and students can submit their assignments in your digital class. You can provide one-on-one feedback and immediately record the grades under the assignment section. These grades are automatically captured by the gradebook and will be published to students upon your approval. Your students can even take online tests, either at home or at the computer lab under your supervision. And you don't have to spend time grading the tests. EasyClass will do it for you. With the calendar feature, it's never been easier tracking due dates. EasyClass always reminds you of the upcoming events, assignments and tests. And no more carrying around memory sticks. Store your personal files, resources and materials under My Files section and have access to them anytime from anywhere. EasyClass is also a social network, whereby each user has a profile and can connect with others. Create or join a group where you can discuss with peers about new trends and share educational content. EasyClass brings together teachers, students and resources. Well, what are you waiting for? Sign up today.
Student dose of West End etiquette.
Shakespeare once said, to be, shut it, to be,
Any questions? Bad. Gross.
So I wanted to show you guys gopher holes that we've been finding out here.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
This is basically just 10 tips. I just leave you with 10 tips for teachers for internet safety. I won't go through all of them due to the sake of time. However, make the best out of technology, be role models, consider who you connect with online, and most importantly, use the most out of technology and basically use the most out of technology for the time you have now. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Jewel. Based on some of the comments I've been reading, this was definitely a timely resource that you just provided. We do have some questions in our Q&A section. And just as a reminder, guys, if you have a question, please do not put it in the chat because it will probably be lost. Make sure you put it in the Q&A section of the program. So Natalie Ramator, I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Her question was, if you can list the possible teaching platforms again. I think you had mentioned Edmodo, and just now you had given some online resources. So if you can just list, or I can have them, I can type in your online classes platforms again.
Yes, so some of the online teaching platforms, it was basically like your Moodle, your Canvas, or your easyclass.com. However, I would suggest whatever the Ministry of Education will then be providing to that could be a, a a teaching tool as well. So basically using that, or finding some really good free ones, because Easy Class is free and I think Moodle is free as well.
Okay. Anna Johnson asks, do you think it is okay for parents to be logged into online class as the teacher and students are engaged in lessons?
What I would say, especially seeing that the parents are now going to be very hands-on, for them more so much just to be in the background, or even if they are there, because it will then pose as resources for them. Especially, well, let me use an example, like how over the past few months, like during the online platform, seeing that I had to help my nephew with a lot of the stuff, I ensured that I was there and present to know how the teacher is teaching. So if he have questions, I could be able to answer them. So I think that it would be best for parents, or even just provide that document for them to say, hey, even if you weren't here, these are the step-by-steps of basically how to, or some of the things that we then did. So I think it would be best.
Yeah, and I also think, to add to what Jewel is saying, that would also be a conversation with the teacher. Just ask if it's
Definitely.
okay for me to sit in on some of the classes while we're having your sessions with my child. And that's an easy fix. Or can you send me the link to the information that you're giving the student, so that in my free time I can go over it and understand what is happening within the classroom setting. So it can go either way. Another question, can you please give the website for the 2 videos presented? They were really great videos. Thank you. That's from Teresa Bastian. So she would like for you to give the website for the 2 video presentations. I think one was San Diego State University.
Yes.
And one was Easy Class.
Yes, and both of those videos can actually be found on YouTube. With the San Diego, with the webcam etiquette, if you basically just quickly search webcam etiquette 5 do's and don'ts, it will pop up on YouTube. And then if you type in easyclass.com, it will then send you to the site, which will then pop up the video, like a brief introductory video of what easyclass.com can then provide.
Okay. So an anonymous attendee is asking, what teaching platforms do you think are appropriate to use for preschoolers and kindergartners?
So now so I think it will be best to do like videos, like your Zoom or your WebEx videos. However, with the platform, you could then use what the Ministry of Education provides, or even like with the easyclass.com, because once you already have those videos, you could then upload it to those sites and label it appropriately, because with the kindergartners, they won't be able to actually maneuver through the sites or the platforms, but their parents would. So I would say, use a lot of videos, use a lot of virtual activities that they could then participate in. However, use like your Easy Class just to always show that the information is there for the teachers, and then also for the teachers, the parents, and the students. So I would say use a lot of Zoom, and then use your online platform more so much to just have those resources there for the parents.
Okay, thank you, Jewel. And one more question before we move on. And for those that we do not address, I will try my best to actually type in responses. But the last question is from Suzette Knowles. Do you know if Easy Class can link with Microsoft 365 or with Google Classroom?
So that I do not know specifically. However, you could always go on the platform, and they also have like a Q&A where you could ask those questions, or even you could actually set up an appointment to meet with somebody from easyclass.com, and they'll run through it with everything. But that I don't know specifically.
Okay, thank you very much, Jewel. We are now going to move on to our third presenter for the morning, Mr. Stephen Thompson, who's going to be discussing fostering soft skills through adversity. So Stephen Thompson is a clinical psychologist, director of equity, belonging, and mental health at the Cape-Eleuthera Island School. Stephen Thompson is from Nassau, Bahamas, and a Doctor of Organization Educational Leadership student at Barry University. He is an experienced clinical forensic psychologist and a certified mental health first aid instructor, as well as a passionate educator and mental health advocate. Stephen has a demonstrated history of working in graduate school and K-12 education, psychotherapy, and school and community mental health. Stephen also has an extensive experience working in forensic mental health settings, such as juvenile detention centers and working with at-risk youth. Stephen is skilled in individual and group counseling and psychotherapy, disaster relief and trauma crisis counseling, as well as youth development, curriculum building, and program development. Stephen is a director of equity, belonging, and mental health at Cape-Eleuthera Island School in South Eleuthera, and the program manager for the Young Men's Leadership Program, a program geared towards character development for at-risk young men in South Eleuthera. Stephen believes in creating spaces that contribute to psychological safety, as well as leading with empathy and developing a holistic understanding of a person as an individual and collective part of a whole. Stephen's approach as a mental health professional is to meet people where they are and help them understand their thoughts and their impact on their behaviors. He believes that effective youth development and overall character development involves bringing awareness to character traits and strengthening them through continued practice, awareness, and application. I give to you now our third presenter, Mr. Stephen Thompson.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So today I'm going to be talking about fostering soft skills through adversity. So essentially we're going to describe what soft skills are, as well as what hard skills are. We're going to apply, so trying to understand really how do we learn or teach these soft skills, whether it's for us or whether it's for our students. And we're going to create, so essentially we're going to understand an easy example for us to be able to teach these soft skills and soft skills development. So first off, we have to understand, what is our working definition of soft skills? So soft skills are a combination of skills such as character traits and interpersonal skills that are considered to be a complement to hard skills. So essentially, we first need to understand what hard skills are. And hard skills are those skills that we acquire through formal education, courses, subject learning, things like writing, arithmetic, reading, plumbing, those different things where, you learn these skills through actual formal education. Essentially, these skills are said to be able to be perfected over time, and they are said to also be a little bit easier to improve upon versus soft skills. So for example, when we think of a clinical psychologist, their hard skills would be their vast knowledge base of mental health and the ability to interpret symptoms through their understanding of human psychology and human psychopathology. So with that, an example of a psychologist's soft skills would be their ability to empathize or empathy, understanding, active listening, relationship building, and effective communication. So with that, soft skills and hard skills, optimally, they work best together, but we recognize that sometimes they may be out of balance. So with that, we have to understand, how do we teach and learn soft skills? So before we can do that, I use this analogy of how do we make a pizza from scratch. If you're someone that likes to be in the kitchen, maybe you have a good understanding of how this is done, but we can kind of go through and understand the steps of this and to be able to understand how do we build soft skills. So essentially, step one, we have to identify the ingredients. What ingredients go into this pizza? Step two, we have to know how the ingredients work together. So how much yeast or how much cheese or however you like your pizza, pineapples or no pineapples, how those things work together in terms of what we want. The third step would be to know how much of the ingredients we need, and also how much do we have, just to have a good understanding of, you know, what ingredients do we maybe need to go and buy or identify where they are, just having a good understanding of where those things are and what we already have. And the fourth step essentially is to know how to put those ingredients together, know how they all work together, and then create what we want. But even with that, we must be able to practice, especially if we are aspiring to make the best pizza that we can. So building soft skills is similarly the same. So you have to identify the soft skills. So be aware of what soft skills are, what are examples of soft skills. We also have to identify or understand how do these soft skills work together. So, you know, recognizing, you know, the hard skills and the soft skills, but also how do the soft skills that we identify, what do they do and how they work together and how do they complement each other. The third step would be know how much of the soft skills that we have. So doing an internal understanding of either ourselves or helping our students understand, you know, what soft skills that they have and what soft skills do they need development on and what soft skills do they need to continue to practice on. And then finally with that, we need to put those soft skills together and continue practicing them. So something that I like to use is the Narnian virtues. And if you're familiar with the Chronicles of Narnia books or Narnian books, a lot of them essentially, you know, provide characteristic traits that the different characters present with throughout the stories. And so essentially the Narnian virtues are characteristics that are exhibited by one person or another through the Chronicles of Narnia books. So I have here some of the, I think it's 12 Narnian virtues, and they are wisdom, love, fortitude, courage, self-control, justice, integrity, forgiveness, gratitude, humility, integrity, hard work, and curiosity. So something that I do with the program that I run the Young Men's Leadership Program in South Eleuthera, is I do this character box activity. And essentially, it's very simple. All you have to do is find a box. And here at the Island School, we are very resourceful. So we like to use different things that we have around because we don't want to waste. So right here, all I have is if you're familiar with scuba diving or snorkeling, all this is a scuba diving mask box. And I put a Young Men's Leadership character box on it. So just find a box, any box that you can have. If you're mobile with your students, or if you're in a classroom setting, maybe be a little bit more creative than this, but it's really up to you. So any container. And what I do is on strips of paper, I essentially take those Narnian virtues that I described before. So if it's courage, I would put that strip of paper, I would put courage on that strip of paper. I would put the definition of courage, and I would leave some strips, some lines, so where students can write, you know, something on those. So then next, all you do is you distribute individual strips of paper to students and have each student read whatever the character trait is. Because what we're trying to do right now is help students understand what wisdom is. First of all, making them aware that wisdom is a word or a thing, depending on what is developmentally appropriate, but helping them understand what it is, apply a definition, and then with that, you know, you can go around the room. What I typically do is I go around the room and I say, I have the students explain to me what they think wisdom is based on that definition. And you get that, with that, you get them to kind of put in their own words, you get to help clarify what it means or what it is, and that helps to solidify the learning. Let's see. And then with that, you know, it really depends on how the conversation is going, but you continue to do that for every student. While doing this, you can ask the students how the virtues can work together. So if one student has curiosity and one student has virtue, or one student has hardworking, an example could be, what I have here is hard work in school, even though it is difficult and I don't like it, what did I say? But being courageous enough to ask questions is important. Apologies for the typo. So the idea is you identify hard work, you identify courageousness, and you identify fortitude in that same one sentence of being able to acknowledge that. And so then what I do is I have students essentially write on a piece of paper a time where they themselves exhibited that virtue during the day, you know, in the past, in the future, anything of that nature. It really just depends on what's going on. I also ask students how they can better work on that virtue. And so essentially with this, when I did this, and just like as a real world response, before I finish and wrap it up with tying it back to adversity. But when I did this activity with the Young Men's Leadership Program, which is essentially a group of about 15-year-old, 14-year-old boys, I did this assignment, we did it with them, and then at the end of the assignment, it was time to leave wherever we were, and I had to drop the young man home. And essentially, if you've ever been in a bus or a van with young students, it can be chaotic sometimes. Sometimes they are, cracking jokes on each other. But what happened was one of the young men, made a joke on one of the other guys about their shoes. And essentially what happened was everyone erupted in laughter, but then one of the boys in jest said, well, you're not showing love right now by saying that. And he was trying to be funny. And to me, I was slightly annoyed in that moment because you're making fun, like you're being sarcastic when you say that. But the young man that initially made the first joke, he experienced, what I saw in him was some ambivalence. And the idea that he was torn between two thoughts. One of, well, I just cracked this joke and everyone laughed at me or laughed at the joke, but now everyone is laughing at me because I essentially am not, walking in what we just finished talking about. So the joke ended up turning back on him. And for me, that was a very good experience to see that happen because even after just this one activity, they continue to do that. They continue to use the words, use the character traits because now they knew what they were. They were aware of them and they were able to tie them into their own behaviors. And so the last thing to kind of really tie it back into adversity is the idea of different things related to journaling and how we journal. The same way that I took the strips of paper and have students write those things is the same thing that we can do as educators and as psychologists and as people that are working with students and write down the same, different virtues and identify within ourselves how are we exhibiting wisdom or curiosity or hard work, and then help our students to be able to do the same. Because once we have an awareness of what these virtues are, when there are troubling times or hard times, we can be able to apply them to ourselves as well. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Stephen. That was wonderful. I enjoyed it. We do not have any questions at this time, but what I want to do is just highlight some of the comments that some of our attendees are posting in the chat. And as I do that, our attendees, you're free to ask questions before we move on to our next presenter. So Joanne Brown, I enjoyed your presentation. Thank you, Jewel, very timely, excellent presentation. Thank you so much. Presentations are really awesome thus far. Well done, and thank you for putting this on. Those boys were able to transfer knowledge to real life. Great session and speakers. Thank you, Stephen, for the practical activities and examples. Gloria Gilbert, although I came in late, but very good presentation. So we're getting some wonderful feedback and we love to hear this. Jessie Moxie just posted a comment, just sharing, such a coincidence that someone sent me on this WhatsApp just now. Intelligence is important in expressing and understanding emotions. Like every other skill, emotional intelligence should be taught, sharpened through practice and observation. Some are better born with emotional intelligence, like some who are smart academically. Those who appreciate literature have better emotional understanding. So that was just a comment from Jessie Thompson, and any of you are free to comment on this. Very informative, Z. Bastian. It's very informative, Stephen. Thanks, Stephen. We'll use in class. So we're getting more comments than questions regarding your presentation.
I have a question. I have a question for Stephen. Are there particular techniques that work better for young men than women in the classroom in terms of character development? Because education tends to be very female heavy when it comes to the teachers, but half of our population is male, right? The constituents that we serve. So are there some things that resonate better with young men?
I think for me and in my experience, humor is the best thing that I can do to support young men, and whether it's learning about something like this, because with them cracking jokes on each other about, this one thing or this one instance, it keeps going. It's now a running joke every time that I meet with them. Although they are a little bit sarcastic with it, it keeps them aware of these things. And so from my experience, it really is to use humor. Humor is really good. It really helps to connect. It really helps to help young men remember, or young boys remember, different materials and whatnot. Just because a lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of young men are just disengaged because it's boring. It isn't because they don't want to learn, it's because it's boring. So if you can make it to where it's more engaging, or at least fun or funny, especially funny is what I found with this group, but that is what they continue to remember.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Charlene actually just prompted me to ask a question. So a lot of educators now are going to be digital, right? So how do we do this? Sometimes it's hard to show personality digitally, right? So how now do we engage these kids on this level, or what advice do you have? Because I know a lot of what you would have said was writing on a piece of paper, so on and so forth. So it was face-to-face interaction. How do we now transfer those skills digitally?
Well, with the same thing with that, I know one thing that you can do, or what I've done is, you can read some of the books online, so which may also be a challenge, but if you can find PDFs of the books, if you're doing literacy or anything like that, and you can kind of highlight, where in the books does it show justice, where in the book does it show wisdom, or even finding shows or, episodes or TV episodes of things that they may watch, but have them highlight or navigate where are those themes coming in. Obviously trying to make it as appropriate as possible, but if we stick on with trying to be humorous as well as informative, I think even as a young man that went through the education system, a lot of the lessons I remember were those funny clips that we watched in class that helped to tie in the information. And so with that, it's really finding ways to meet students where they are in order to help them to solidify and be interested in the information. And that could be, maybe watching some shows that, 15-year-olds are watching and navigating ways to see where the characters in the shows are showing these things, because then it ties it back in. Something that I used to do in the past, but I used to use music to where we're listening to this music that they typically listen to, but we're pulling out the themes. So we're pulling out the emotions, we're pulling out what the rappers are saying about how they feel or what's going on in their lives, and helping the young men to apply to themselves, just becoming aware of, although this music may not be the music that I personally listen to or you personally listen to, it is what they're listening to. And as they kind of get accustomed to pulling out the themes, and not just, although there are some negative themes, but also like the regular, emotion focused themes, that really helps like tie it in and, really relate to the students.
So essentially you're talking about meeting them where they are, right? So meeting them where they are and then trying to elevate them to another level. And that's wonderful. So we have a few more questions before we go on to our final presenter. And I really wanted to get to these. Heidi Holloway, Stephen, can you please clarify what soft skills are? So just if you can reinforce what soft skills are. And Heidi Holloway also asks, can EI, emotional intelligence, be taught? And if so, can you recommend some teaching resources for primary age or younger students? And I think any of our panelists can answer that as well, but going with you, Stephen, for now, can you clarify what soft skills are?
Yeah, so really soft skills are those things that complement hard skills. So soft skills are essentially our ability to communicate effectively, our ability to empathize with others. So I can give you another example. Historically, unfortunately, when we think of customer service in the Bahamas, right? You think of the job that the customer service representative can do may be great. The actual tangible, getting your materials together, getting, whatever it is at the bank, wherever, not putting anyone on blast, but being able to get the actual job done. But how many times though, even though that job is done, that experience still felt horrible because you were spoken to in a certain way, with a certain tone, with a lack of empathy, with poor customer service, even though the job was done. So it's the idea that those soft skills, those people skills essentially there's a deficit in that. And that's a lot of times when we think of poor customer service, it can typically be, you know, this person had an attitude with me, or this person didn't convey this information with me effectively or the way that I wanted to receive it. So that's really when I say, or when we say soft skills, it's those people skills. How do you interact with people? How do you use your hard skills, you know, your ability to navigate through a banking system and be able to, you know, provide customer service that is on a human to human level that is respectful.
All right, thank you so much, Karen and Stephen. Really great interactions there, awesome questions. I'm learning a lot as we go. So this is the time where we do our housekeeping, and I want to hear from you, right? So I'm going to do a poll quickly to see where you are, because what we're going to talk about is Character Day itself, how you can execute that. And remember, I'm looking for your ideas for hosting events. I'm also looking for your ideas about how we can help you in terms of what kind of supplies we could provide to those who attended this webinar. So please stay on. We have some great things coming. So I'm really, really curious to find out how many of you really attended last week's webinar, so that we could get an idea going forward. So I have a new poll. Did you attend last week's webinar? So you have 3 options. Wow, I say a lot for yes, we did. Wow, we have a lot of first timers. All right, a few more of you still have time to vote. Give you 10 seconds. All right. Okay, and these are our results. So 52%, or just a little bit of half of you attended both last week and this week. I know we have lots of competing things to do. There are webinars everywhere. I'll be so happy to have you back. Quite a amount of you, this is the first time that you're joining us. And some of those didn't attend last. You could also look at last week's on our Facebook page or YouTube channel. So if you're in that category, no, this is my first Character Day webinar, please go to our Facebook page. So you can find out the webinar that we did last week, so you could get some of those wonderful insights that we shared and learn along with us. So what I'm going to do is talk about what's next, right? What's next for Character Day. So once we check out of this webinar, I'd like you to think about, you know, what are you going to do to celebrate Character Day? We got lots of great strategies and tips, but we'd like to know that you're participating. This helps us to reach out to you, figure out, you know, how we can best serve your needs. So I'll be sending out an email that will give you a link so that you could sign up to participate in Character Day Bahamas. So that's going to come to you by email. You don't need to write down the website. I got you. And as we did last week's webinar, we did this week's webinar. I'm sure some ideas have sprung into your mind about things you want to do. Maybe you got that box that Stephen is recommending. Maybe you're going to talk about emotional intelligence and talk about, you know, what is this character thinking or feeling? Have you ever felt like this? Right? We have lots of things that we want to do. I remember that power pose from last week. So please, in the chat, I'd love if you could share some of the ideas that you have, right? About how you want to observe Character Day this year. So open up the chat feature and just add a few comments if any of you have thoughts about what you think you might do for Character Day. You don't have to stick with that idea, right? But it's just, what are your initial thoughts?
Okay, so we have a Jan Ware Russell. Focus on emotional intelligence and digital citizenship as related to the character periodic table. Then we have Zoom meeting of this kind. So very similar to what we're doing. Do something very similar. Martinez Bullard, I plan to make use of hard and soft skills I like. Lardon Barr, soft skills. Deanna DeVoe Miller, I will use Stephen Sparks' idea with some modification. Daniel Jones, I'm interested in painting a mural that showcases positive character, something that will last long. I also want to have a Zoom meeting to talk about it. Lucy Cunningham says, I will share the emotional intelligence. Joanne Brown Hamilton, focus on soft skills.
All right, thank you so much. Right, so we got those creative juices thinking. So now that you're thinking about what can I do, once you've registered for Character Day, the next step is to plan what you're going to do and then execute it. Right, so in these pictures here, we have the picture on the left is some Lyford International School. I think it was 2 years ago. They did a chalk mural on their driveway. Right, so each kid in the school, because they have a pretty small school community, so they were able to get everyone out, different grade levels at different times, and they did a huge mural on their driveway. Then here, over here we have 101 preschool, right? They do an assembly every year, but they also had each grade level made, they use their creativity and produce different products. So here we have a student with a bracelet, and those bracelets represented different character strengths. So once you do your activity, please share it. All right, we want the world to see lots of positive activities happening. So you can share it to the Character Day Bahamas Facebook page. If you haven't liked and followed us yet, please do that. Or you can email your images, maybe a little bit of text about what you're doing so that I can then post it for you. We also are trying to build our Instagram page. And then you can apply for a small grant. So that means you could get some money, right? So those of you who want to take it to another level, develop a long-term project, we have a small grant process. And groups, whatever group it is, your church group, your youth group, your class group, your whole school, you can apply for a small grant of up to $1,000, right? And so we have an application form. I will also send out an email with information about how you can apply for the small grant, so you don't need to scribble down and write anything. We're going to send it right to your inbox. And so, and the submission deadline is for that is October 15th. So we're looking for some people who want to do longer term projects. And those that are most successful are those that are innovative, so show us something different. Those that have active engagement, so that the participants are actively doing something that results in character building or cultivation of character. Something that's needs-based, where you say, you know, I recognize that there's this issue in my community or in my school or wherever, and so I am designing a project that helps to fill that need and impactful. So to give you an example of some of our previous winners. So in 2018, we had Senior School Psychological Services. They received a grant. So that's where Jewel is now with that department. She was at the PACE school before. And their theme was, I am character education for a digital lifestyle. And so they did several things, assembly, student activity, they did stuff with the PDA, they had a service project, they did PD for their teachers. CC Sweeting continues to be a winner every single year. You guys need to give them some competition for their character building through service. And we see a little bit more about them soon. Club E Squared and Exuma, they did a social responsibility project where they were giving out, I think, reusable bags to their community in partnership with a local food store to help to reduce plastic pollution and also random acts of kindness. And then we have Long Island Mangrove Bush Primary School. They participate every year. They had a We Care uniform and school supply assistance and drive for students in their community. These are last year's winners, right? Just giving you some ideas. So the Bahamas National Trust Discovery Club, they were awarded $500 to help with their 5-star forest project, where they were planting native plants and seeds. The idea there is that they were trying to cultivate respect for the environment, cultivate social responsibility. So even though I'm not planting this tree in my yard, planting this tree in the community is going to provide benefits for others. And also working together. So we see here in this picture a group of students in the Discovery Club working together to plant their seeds. Their club has huge impact. You're talking about 8 islands, over 1,000 students participated. We also gave an award to Full Life Outreach, or FLOW. They have an impact club, and they had a campus beautification project where they were going to decorate bins and stuff. So they're looking to encourage students to take responsibility for their environment, right? So when I was in a school setting, sometimes you'll have people, they throw stuff on the floor and they're like, oh, well, we have a janitress, right? So, but each and every one of us is responsible for our environment. They are in 8 public high schools throughout New Providence. So again, we're looking at impact. CCC Things carries through service project. Annually, they have been taking their entire school population out to do volunteer service. So on the day that they designate as Character Day, they bus everyone to different locations throughout New Providence. From National Art Gallery, they do beach cleanups, they go to old people's homes, they go to children's homes, everywhere to give service. Adastra Gardens to help them clean up, to national parks, right? So and then they also have a moment where they reflect on their work with their students. What you have done, how has this impacted you? How has what you done impacted your community? So it's a great opportunity for giving of self and building character. So those are just some ideas that they have, right? And all of them we see a common thread. What's your superpower, right? This is Will Simmons. He presented at one of our workshops maybe 2 years ago. He's since opened his own school, the Green School in Harbor Island, where and character development has always been an important part of his practice, right? So here, this is an image that he sent me a few years ago. It's pretty cool, showing he had their students dress up as superheroes and talking about their character strengths. What's the character strength that's represented by the superhero that you chose? All right, so every year we give out goodies to help you. We give out posters and armbands and banners and t-shirts and all sort of stuff. But like I mentioned last week, this year we're in a virtual type of environment. So we're not really sure what you need and whether these things are applicable, all right? So what I want you to do is to share with me, share with us, what you think would be useful to you in this context. So then we could then go out and purchase, obtain, or whatever these items that are useful to you right now and are relevant to your current situation. So in this, right now in the chat, I would like to give you a minute or two to give us examples, give us suggestions of things that you think would be most useful right now in our current situation.
Okay, Desiree Nikita Neely, she says, laptops and tablets. Of course. Right. If you're going to be doing anything digital, you would need that. Kimberly Seymour Seconds at laptops. Maudlene Cooper, literature on digital safety. That's interesting. That's a good idea. Lardon Barr, sanitation supplies.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Michelle Moss says, we are still decorating our classroom, so posters are good.
Okay.
Or you can create a backdrop for your home office as well, so I'm sure that would help as well. Okay, character building online classes. That's from Tanya Store Bell. Kelly Jolly, printable program outlines. Example, what Stephen spoke about outlines in a workshop for us to conduct online seminars with our children and youth groups. So the resources essentially that they can use digitally. Natalie says digital posters, games, coloring pages, books. Raymond Nemar, charts and banners. Elizabeth says PDF coloring pages for Character Day. Vanria Roberts, tablets, laptops, PDF coloring books. Lerdon Barr says Character Day mask. Mask with character traits on it as a reminder.
All right, so we will take lots of and keep putting your suggestions in even as I move forward, because we'll be able to access all of your suggestions, and then we'd assess our situation and get back to you on what we can supply and also how we are going to do it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. All right, so as usual, when you sign off, when you're going to be able to get a feedback form again, and at the end, you'd also get your certificate. And I'll mention that again when I come all the way to the end. So this is going to be celebrated annually for the next 3 years. So this year is our 5th year, and then we have funding to do a 7th and 8th year. So we are going to be around for you over the next 2 years. We are absolutely 100% certain of that. And again, filling out our survey helps us to figure out what the impact is. So even though it's the same survey, if you were already here, if you did the first session, this is a different session, please fill out the survey again. And I'll also be sending you another email for somebody to find out, to get volunteers for people who want to participate in a longer term study with us, right? Somebody who wants to consistently implement character development practices in order over the entire school year, so that we can assess what impact that has. All right, so at this time, I will now turn it over to Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell-Dean, who will help us to close off.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So we ended our last session with a mindfulness practice that Denika led us through. And so we just want to do that again for this, our final session with you, before you enter into your Character Day activities, understanding that we cannot pour from an empty cup. So we want to just give us some tools that we can use with our students as well to kind of help center us and help us feel connected as we go into this new school year. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way or on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So one of the ways that I kind of break that down is mindfulness means being here now, right? Being here now, wherever your hair is, just being present in that moment and not judging any aspect of that awareness. So mindfulness requires awareness, presence, and attention. And really that's all that it requires. Now, I know sometimes some people may connect mindfulness with meditation, and then meditation with a particular religion, maybe Hinduism or Buddhism, but mindfulness is really just the practice of being present in the moment. And if you are someone that is Christian or practices Christianity, for example, there are lots of references in the Bible, like be still and know, right? Or even if we think about the way that God gave Adam life, is that he breathed into him. So there are lots of connections that you can make with mindfulness to make it more relevant to you and your particular practice. And as we're wrapping up, I just want to lead us through a very quick mindfulness exercise. here are some of the benefits of mindfulness that are listed on this slide. It helps us to build that emotional intelligence that Denika referenced earlier. It can help us to be more intentional and focused, as well as boost our working memory. So I just want to lead us through a mindfulness exercise. And this exercise is really going to take just 2 minutes, right? So if you could just give me 2 minutes. And what I'm going to do is simply, first, I'm going to set my timer for the first minute. And in this minute, I just want you to count how many times you inhale, okay? So just regular, you know, not doing anything specific. I just want you to count in a regular resting state, how many times are you taking an inhale, okay? So our 60 seconds are starting now. Each inhale. Just 20 seconds. Three, two, one. All right. So if you can just post in your chat, what was the number that you got? I know for me, I'll post my number first. And I did it. I had 14, 24, 12, 9, 18, 15, 7. Ooh, you a deep breather. Okay, 16, 24. All right, so I see a lot of numbers coming in. The highest that I've seen is 27, and the lowest that I saw so far was 7. And so with this mindfulness exercise that I want to lead us through, I call it my mindful minute, because it only takes 60 seconds. And the goal in the mindful minute is to, whatever your number was when we counted the first time, to see if you can bring that number down to 7, 5 if you're really good, okay? And so the way that we do this is we do what we call diaphragmatic breathing. So that means that you're not breathing into your chest, right? Those shallow breaths, we're not doing that. You want to breathe way down into your belly. So the type of breaths, if you're a singer, or if you play a wind instrument, or if you are a runner or a swimmer, you know that you have to take you kind of got to get your posture right, so that all of the breath can go. So make it make noise, right? Breathing in fully through our nostrils and then slowly out through our mouths, okay? And we're gonna see if we can bring our breathing down. So just kind of get yourself in a relaxed position. If you can place both of your feet firmly on the floor. If it is comfortable to you, you can close your eyes or just relax them. And I am going to start our mindful minutes again right now. and time. Okay, so hopefully you brought what were your numbers now? I shouldn't see any 24s. 6, 4, okay, 12, 10, 7, 5, 3. Were you holding your breath? Are you still alive? Okay, great. So the numbers definitely went down, and the more you practice that, you will find that you can bring your numbers down. And I love that exercise because you can literally do it anywhere, right? If it's when we were in our cars going to work, right? Just before you step out into the classroom, maybe before you sign into your Zoom class, in the middle of the Zoom class. One of the things that you can do to kind of help if you're using it with young people is to use your hand, and you can kind of trace your hand or have them trace their hand so that the inhale is up the finger and the exhale is down the finger. Inhale, right? And exhale down, just so that they can have a visual to kind of help them understand the pace that they're supposed to be going through, and that their minds aren't necessarily wandering too much as they engage in the mindful practice. And so if you can do this once a day, more than once a day, you know, we have so many distractions, from our phones to the news to just everything that is going on. These little mindfulness practices can really help center us and bring us back into a space of just being present as we go throughout our school year. So I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you again for coming.
All right, thank you so much, Niambi. I feel so calm. Actually, I had to do that 5-finger breath thing just before we started this webinar to center myself, because I felt my heart racing a little bit. All right, so what's gonna happen next? So I'm gonna send you an email probably tomorrow that gives you a link to the presentations that we did both last week and this week. And within those links, if you download the presentations, you should be able to get those wonderful videos that you saw. I'm also going to encourage you to sign up for Character Day. If you're going to host an event, whatever it is, how big, how small, virtual, in person, any kind of event, I'd like you to sign up to let us know. You'll also be getting an email about the small grants program so that you can have a link in order to get the application form. And we'll be asking for 10 volunteers, right? If you know that if you think you're ready, if you already think that you want to volunteer, please just send us an email to let us know that. And then we're going to figure out how to get you those goodies. So we're going to look through your suggestions and figure out how we can get what we need to get to you to help you host Character Day. Again, a reminder about our survey and certificate. So once I end, you will see on your screen, you should have a button that says leave, or maybe you might have to click more to find leave. So once you click leave, you come up to this page that says, thank you for attending, please click continue. When you click continue, you will get a link to the survey. Please, when you complete the survey, please remember to click submit. After you click submit, then you'd be taken to a page where you can put in your information to get your e-certificate, right? So again, when I end, leave the meeting, look for this continue screen, complete the survey, click submit, and then you get access to your certificate. And if you have any questions, comments, things that you remember when you're late at night, you're like, oh yeah, I should have said this. Please send us an email, characterdaybahamas242@gmail.com. And so with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. You stuck with us straight through. We went over a little bit of time, but it was because we had so much to share and so much engagement. You know, so many questions were being asked. We absolutely love that. We're so sorry that we couldn't be with you in person this year, but we did enjoy this new process, this new normal, as we're calling it. Thank you so much to the Templeton World Charity Foundation, who's generously funded this project. to the Bahamas Age Foundation for their support, and to Focus for their support as well, and of course to all of our facilitators who have shared their expertise with us, right, and led us through this amazing journey. Remember, you'll be hearing from me sometime soon in the next few days. Have a wonderful